Hello and welcome back to The Dive. It is season 3, episode 16. Woo!
Super prepared. He knew that the whole time.
We never have to read off of scripts. But we're coming back off of MSI. This is going to be the MSI recovery episode.
Oh, have you guys not done one since then?
Nope.
So this is the first one.
Is this where we get to downplay G2's success?
Moving on.
I'm interested. I'm interested to hear your take on it.
No, it was just a joke because
It's not Line League.
yeah, that Travis getting flamed on his YouTube channel. Sorry, go flame him.
Yeah. Everyone disliked his video because some negative comments about G2, I think.
Yeah,
I
basically.
didn't really know the full context.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
just
You got it.
I just saw him complaining about it.
What a bad boy.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, how are you guys feeling about going into Worlds off of last year's Worlds? Both EU and NA did, much better than historically they have. EU got finals, we got semifinals, and here at MSI, again, both of us getting finals, one of us winning
By a little. It was close, competitive series.
Small margin.
Who showed up on the day,
Any given Sunday. I'm excited. I think it's awesome, right? Yeah, we got blasted by G2 in the finals. That wasn't close. And people were disappointed about that, and I get that. I was disappointed too, right? It was a hard series to watch. But that being said, if I told you going into MSI that we were going to make finals and get destroyed, you would have been like, hell yeah, let's go, let's get smashed in those finals. I mean, we've had our 2 best international results ever now back to back. That is extremely promising. I think that is so exciting, as far as a time to be an NA fan. And, and I look back to Fnatic, making finals last year at Worlds, and they got blasted, right? And Caps is now here winning an international title and showing people that it is achievable. It's not just that, if you're a Western team, if you're from EU or NA, you are only playing for scraps. You can actually be the best team in the world. And I think, G2 has shown that, and that's so exciting.
I wouldn't go into Worlds, since you talked about projecting forward, I wouldn't go in being like, we're now going to beat IG again or anything like that, because that felt like a crazy, crazy upset, and that's what makes them so cool. But it does feel good for the region as a whole to think you
can compete though.
Yeah, we can compete. The playoffs in NA were really competitive. So TSM and C9 are hopefully around Team Liquid's level. So if they're the ones who make it to NA or to Worlds, that we'll actually have the competitive group stage where more than just one team is our savior, which was C9 the last couple of years. It would be cool if 2 NA teams got out of groups. Wouldn't that be wild? I'm ready for that reality.
Dare to dream.
I think I'm ready for it. I think it could happen.
That's one of the things I was most excited for, because Team Liquid doing so well, defeating the defending world champions, making it to finals and everything, and I was like, you like that? We got 2 more of these at least.
We got 3 of them
back here in NA.
Oh, 3 total.
Yeah.
I was like,
2 more.
Yeah. Sorry,
I'm not taking away the original one. But that makes people also really excited, looking forward to even just Rift Rivals.
Yeah.
Because now EU NA Rift Rivals is a premier event coming off of an EU NA final.
Best 2 regions in the world.
Where, people are memeing it a lot. But literally, we defeated SK Telecom and Invictus Gaming. Those are super legitimate claims now to the EU NA Rift Rivals being this super hype event, and we do get to see the deeper rosters, right? People do get to have TSM and Cloud9 there. All the people that were like, oh no, why did we send Team Liquid? I wish we had X team, because of all the reverse sweeps. Now we get to see top 3 from all of them stacked up.
Yeah,
and, that's gonna be fun.
I'm actually so excited for looking forward to Rift Rivals and Worlds. As you said, we had 3 teams that were super competitive. If we are assuming that Team Liquid having success on the international stage is indicative of the level of the other teams, even if you can't get all teams out of groups or anything like that, the world in which it's 3 teams that could be competing to get out of the group that are on that level, I think is very, very exciting. And for Rift Rivals, I think it's awesome too, because, I look back to last year's Rift Rivals, and I think a lot of fans were understandably frustrated around the 100 Thieves situation, and the fact, that the 100 Thieves had kind of ended up tanking before it, and then they were, testing out academy players and everything. And I think people are really excited to see, kind of a good foot forward for our region, to see these 3 teams that almost everyone is going to unanimously agree were the strongest, being, representatives for Rift Rivals.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. I still think G2 it will be the strongest team there.
Yep.
Shocker.
Ooh.
After they 3-0 their own
So-
region, then 3-0 ours.
Yeah. So like it's definitely going to be interesting how the format looks this year. I haven't heard the final like cut on what the format is going to be, like like point systems and stuff. It's going to be the same as last year or
I
whatever.
think it's the same as last year.
Okay. Because then we still have a chance to win the tournament, even if
two of our
if
TFs.
G2 is literally the best.
Because
team.
the final thing is the best of 5, where they have to like rotate in and out.
Yeah.
So your best team can play twice, but they can't play more than twice.
Yeah.
Right.
So theoretically, if G2 gets them 2 wins, then you could still win by never beating G2.
My concern a little bit is just what some of the comments have been by some of the pro players, because they sometimes seem like, oh, it's in the middle of our season and we're doing all this other stuff and there's no like prize for winning this. But I think with the fact that NA and EU were the 2 finalists, hopefully that gives more importance to the tournament, even for them to be like, hey, we're not just like fighting at the bottom of the table and like a laughing stock. Like we're actually potentially 2 of the best regions in the world, and now I get to compete against potentially one of the other best regions in the world for practice, for like honor or whatever. Because I think a lot of EU fans and NA fans have a lot of riding on this, whereas last year I don't think NA felt like, oh, even if we did well at Rift Rivals, it meant a ton. Whereas now it's like, if we can beat Origin and Fnatic, like, okay, yeah, G2 is like a super team, but the rest of your region's not that great. We're better. And for Europe, like you want to go in, beat them, be like, not only is G2 our super team, but we're better as a whole. And so I think fans are going to care a lot more about this Rift Rivals, and I hope that bleeds into the pro players who, when it's so far out right now, sound a little like meh on it.
Oh no, I've been caring a lot about you versus NA for 10 years, Mark.
Yeah, but like it ebbs and flows, and like how
literally
big.
were flaming me before there was even a server in Korea. It was EU versus NA. That's how it started. It was Wicked and Hotshot. Is the first EU versus NA rivalry that I remember, because they both played top lane. And
I remember the stream 200 ping scrims across the ocean. I remember those days. Yeah.
So it's definitely an old river that runs very deep.
Yeah, well, it's going to be really exciting. I think looking forward, people definitely should be very happy. I think overall with the results that NA has been putting forward internationally. But with that, let's look forward to Summer Split. Summer Split obviously going to be starting this weekend. There have been some changes among the teams. We are going to do power rankings, but we'll probably talk mostly about teams that we think are going to be doing a lot better or worse. Some of the teams that got some new players. The some of the major pickups that I can really think of, or changes if you want to call them that. Obviously, we had Amazing coming, joining 100 Thieves. TSM has moved Greg back to the starting spot, so him and Acadian are apparently going to be sharing time there, and they actually picked up an academy jungler. So assuming they're actually actively going to be swapping back and forth, would probably be what's happening there. And the 100 Thieves team is looking a little bit different. They're using Soligo also.
And Cody's son.
Oh yeah, and Cody's son. Yeah, so actually,
and Wadid.
Yeah. For FlyQuest. Yeah.
Yeah, changes everywhere.
Yeah, there are actually quite a few changes. Yeah.
I mean, I think we should start at the top of our list if we're gonna do the power ranking list.
Mm-hmm.
So the top 3 that we've been talking about already for the show: Team Liquid, Cloud9, and TSM. What are your order for the top 3, Mark? Do you even have a different team in the top 3?
No, my top 3 are the same, but I have TSM number 1, TL number 2, and C9 number 3.
Okay.
I actually have TSM above them. Yeah.
Wait, say it again.
I said TSM number 1.
Okay.
TL number 2, C9 number 3.
Okay.
So remember, this is regular season.
Yeah.
Right,
Regular
this is-
season predictions. This is not actually who wins. And I'm actually the same. And for the simple
Get out of-
reason
I'm going for the shock value. You're one of you needs to be normal. What do you?
I'm gonna mine's. I have Team Liquid even lower. Is that more shock?
maybe, I don't know.
That just sounds like you've gone crazy.
So
I'll have reasoning. I'll let
yeah,
go
so I
first,
mean,
though.
my thought process is simply that, like, I still think Team Liquid is the odds-on favorite to win the championship in summer and to win again. I just think that there is a real come down after an international event. Where they were just competing to be the best team in the world. They were playing against all these high stakes things, and they are taking a break after that, right? Yes, they are back to scrims now. Whereas a team like TSM is going to be so hungry, I think, to prove themselves after having lost in the finals in reverse sweep. I think they're going to come out of the gate swinging. Where I think TL is more likely to have a slower couple early weeks, right? And it's not even that, like, I'm saying I don't think TL is the best team anymore. It's more that I think they're their record in summer will be off to a slower start, and they'll finish lower in the standings as a result.
Why did you put them at second then? I have the same reasoning. I put them even lower.
Because I still think that they're so good that they're going to win a lot of games.
They literally just started practicing yesterday.
Yeah.
Like they haven't done any scrims, and everything, all the work that they have been doing was on the MSI patch. Like Scuttle Crab is the old Scuttle Crab spawning early and everything. Like there's so much that's going to change. I expect, and the way that the schedule is with TSM having to play, or Team Liquid having to play TSM again right at the beginning, I expect TSM to win that game. And I think that Team Liquid and deservedly so. I think the players should get a break after so much international success, and the top teams never have enough off time. But I do think that it is going to cause the very typical lag of the first place team at the beginning of next split. We've seen it for so many years now. The team that goes over to MSI will come back, have a very slow start, and it is due to practicing on the previous patch and then having a vacation afterwards. And it brings up this topic of burnout.
Yeah. Before we get into burnout, I think the other thing too is like Azale was saying, the stakes are lower and like your competition is lower. So like it's just hard to get up to the same level of like, like it's hard to explain to people who don't compete, but like when you're going up against someone you're expecting to beat and it's for nothing, it's for a regular season win compared to like, oh, I just played a best of 5 versus G2 to be the best team in the world. Like it's hard to reach the same levels of energy and engagement. So let alone the fact that you're potentially burned out and all this other stuff. It's just like, I'm not playing, Teddy and Mata and scrims every day. And like honing steel on steel necessarily. Like I think all that combines to make a very slow start for Team Liquid. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to say before we get into burnout was just the TSM point about the junglers, in case we don't get back to this. I think TSM, traditionally, historically, the way they've used subs is pretty bad, in quotation marks, depending on what you're trying to get out of it. If you're just trying to make the best 5-man roster, I think what they do is fine. Mm-hmm. But between having Turtle, saying that they would bring Grig back last split when they didn't use him at all, a number of other times that they've had like people behind someone ready to go, they never use them. And so I think whoever ends up being the better jungler for the team will just see like 100% of the playtime come like even after like 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah, so you feel like when TSM talks about using their substitutes and stuff like that, it's more of tryouts. We haven't figured out.
Yeah, that's what it feels to me. It's not a substitution system. It's like it's a depth chart battle. And like eventually someone wins. Turtle never saw playtime once Double Lift came back. I expect, if Grig is better than Acadian, they'll just select him. And so like that's why I don't think it's going to be a problem for TSM between like finding synergy between the two.
The one thing that like I normally would be 100% agreed with you, and it may end up being that regardless, but the one thing that made me think they actually might be trying, giving a real shot at this is A, their coaching has changed. It is Zix now. And B, they picked up a separate academy jungler. Right. So, most teams, when they are doing this sort of thing, they're saying, oh, yeah, they're going to be a substitution role. But actually, one of them is just their academy player and he's going to be playing academy. And the other guy's going to be the starter and he's going to be playing LCS. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of overlap. The fact that they actually have 3 junglers and one is listed, other than these two as the starting academy guy, what kind of made me think, hey, maybe they're actually giving this a real shot. Of trying to set it up like some of these teams have been successful with it in the past, right? When we've seen even Cloud9 regionally do it, and SKT famously had done it for many years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bringing the extra jungler is a very good point because like, Dardoch and Meteos did swap time, but one of them was always playing an academy last split. The thing about Zix, though, I disagree because I don't know if this is still spilling the tea or anything, but like... I
haven't heard of that.
You never heard spill the tea?
No.
Spill the tea, sis?
No.
It's just like what you say when someone's like got drama and they're dropping like the inside knowledge. Spill the tea. You guys are old. I know I'm the same age, but Jesus.
I don't know. You're the one talking about drinking tea.
One of the problems that Zix ran into and one of the reasons he was let go of was because he wasn't swapping rosters and experimenting. And he's always been super set in his ways of like, these are the 5 guys I'm working with. And he doesn't, even if he mixes scrims for a little bit, they never see playtime. And so
people change, Mark.
Maybe people change, but I'm betting against it.
I like that. This is our first tea that has been spilled on the dive.
You guys have never spilled tea before?
Are you juiced? The tea is being spilled?
Here, you have to pour some out.
Pour some tea out?
Yeah,
okay. This is tea, by the way.
Pour one out for the homies?
Yeah. You actually did. What are you doing? You madman.
You think I'm not going to follow through, Mark?
He doesn't back down from bold
What
challenges.
else can I get Kobe to do? Bet you won't jump on it.
I really like bringing up the point about the extra jungler though, because that is one of the biggest mentality shifts, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of this whole substitution thing is like
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just
one
gonna
person.
see.
I know. I'm playing through it.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things is the mentality, and that's kind of the hardest battle for me when people are discussing all these like 10-man rosters and substitutions and stuff like that. Is the environment for these players, and this is such a mentally exhaustive game that it's very important to have the players like in a good state, feeling about sharing time and all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're like, all right, I'm not the lower rung here, I'm not the academy one or whatever, and they're actually sharing time, I still think it's a problem to share time literally though, because you have to split time in scrims, you have to you split time on stage for LCS. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I think in the like happy, fun, everything is great world where both people are fully bought in, both people are the best of friends, both people are really happy to see the other guy play,
and they got different play
and they
styles.
have
So
different play styles, and there's everything is working. Damn, that is good, right? Like that is really, really good. But it is so hard to not feel like, oh, he's stealing my job. Oh, if he does too well, oh, maybe I don't get to play anymore. Oh shit,
or like you have a bad scrim game and you turbo in, and then suddenly it's like, oh, that might have hurt my chances of playing this weekend.
Yeah, I mean we've heard Medios even talk about this, and this is a very real thing. I think the whole idea of even when I was playing WoW, when people started having 4-man rosters and sometimes there'd be overlapping classes, is the whole idea of like, do you really want to help that person fix their issues? If I'm like, oh, Kobe's doing this thing wrong, but like I don't know if I really want to tell him because I'm trying to keep that spot, right? Like you're training your replacement, so to speak. And I know Media had talked about that in the past, and how that can be a really weird dynamic on teams where it's like, especially if you have the one guy who's supposed to be the veteran player, and then the other guy who's supposed to be there as this like mechanical god or whatever, and supposed to be getting kind of trained up.
I always like coming from the traditional sports world. I'm always like, I kind of hate hearing that mindset, but I can't deny that it is a very human reaction to it, where it's like you want to be like, we're a team and we're all going to get better together, kind of. But
people in pro gaming are not brought up in that environment. That is the biggest difference to me. You're not like, if I'm in the NBA, I played like as a little kid in a for fun league, and then I played in my public school, and then I played in my high school, and then I played in college, and now I'm in the NBA, and I've been in the system the whole time. Being a pro gamer is like I sat alone and played on my computer, and I was really good. And now I'm put with these other people, and I have to do what they say. And it's like a very different shift. All
right. Right now, where do you lie on the Grig versus Acadian? Who do you think is going to be the most useful?
Acadian.
What was that dance? Did we get that on camera?
Acadian.
No, but it was...
the cheek thing? I don't know what that was.
You told me
you're full in the Acadian camp. All right.
I'm full because I think the biggest problem I've seen with TSM over the last couple of years is sometimes they fall into like a very controlled play pattern, and they don't take big risks. And we've seen internationally how important it is to be willing to take plays that are not 90-10 plays, like go for the 60-40 sometimes. And I think sometimes you watch Acadian do something really dumb and like kill himself, but I think he's also that spark plug that their early game needs, which I like a lot more than Grig, who I think is really controlled.
Yeah, the thing to me, like I my mind is telling me kind of the same thing, but in the back of my head, I'm like, well, then why would they even put Grig back in the starting position, right? Because Grig has been away from the team for a while. I didn't think that he was going to even get a shot to be back like on the LCS stage unless he had really proven himself to be better in scrims and internally. And that's the only thing that is kind of leaving that question in my mind is you just had a really solid season with Acadian. Acadian's got more praise than he ever has in his career, really. Why is he not the starter anymore if Grig is not, heavily outperforming him, or they internally don't feel that Grig is better, right? And that is the only thing kind of leaving me to feel like Grig is maybe going to be the better candidate.
All right, let's move on to Cloud9 then.
Okay.
You had them
third.
What did you have them?
Third.
Yeah, then second. Why are they second?
Because I think that Team Liquid is going to drop more games at the beginning. It was mostly about Team Liquid dropping more games and me putting Team Liquid lower. But I think that both Cloud9 and TSM are so hungry coming off of reverse sweeps. Like they have been practicing nonstop. The Cloud9 also has the deepest roster. Like they have amazing academy players. They have always, trained up all this new talent. So I feel like they also coming into it, and especially with Reaper as head coach, always try out a few more like hidden strategies, versus their academy teams, and with guys like Blabber and Golden Glue and stuff on the bench that could easily be starters on LCS teams. I think that they're going to finish really strong.
They're going to find the Sonateric at the start of week 1.
The new Sonateric?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yumi?
Let's not go there.
I mean, it's not shocking at all to say that C9 could finish, second or even first, right? They were tied with record to TL in spring, right? The only reason that they were second place instead of first is because they lost the head-to-head. So, I think it's totally conceivable for any of these 3 teams to be first. These teams were all very close. TSM, I think, had the slowest start of the 3, but looked really good down the stretch. So, these are 3 teams that should be competing for first place, and I think that's really, really exciting to have had that in spring and to have no major shakeups on these teams going into summer. And the only reason we're really focusing more on TSM here is because they're the only team that really changed something, right? And that's why there's kind of more to talk about there. So maybe we can move on to some of the other teams that are kind of sticking out to you guys.
Over the rest of the league?
I'd say the next highest one I have that made changes is FlyQuest, bringing Wadid. I do think that because I've heard a lot about Wadid's communication is really good. Like he talks a lot, and he did have success on G2. I know recently he had the complete opposite of success on Rogue, where it was literally the worst team. Yeah. Did they win any games, actually?
They were 2-16 or 2-14, whatever.
Okay, so they won 2 games.
Yeah, they won 2. So I looked it up recently.
He's coming off a very rough split in Europe. So I'm not like super hyped about it, but I do think it is an interesting pickup because I know that is one of the things that FlyQuest was really looking to build on, was the communication aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I like Wadid. It's just hard to get excited about this because I think JJ is a pretty good player. Yeah. I understand that Wadid's better, but like I never felt like the problem with FlyQuest that I have with like pushing them into the top 3 is not like a support position or communication. It's just like, what a lot of people have always said, like raw carry potential. Like
you want star power.
I want star power. And like Wadid and even the support position as a whole is not one where you're like, yes, now this guy is going to.
What about Core JJ? That's the star power.
That's star power. I'll give you that. But like, if you just put Core JJ on like Optic, I wouldn't be like, hey.
Really? That would be a great story. Reuniting with Crown. They had to.
All right. I mean, not narratively.
Okay, what if what if Core JJ is on FlyQuest? Are they in the top 3?
Maybe. But like, I think Wadid's not Core JJ. So like, I think, it's hard for me. I think they'll still be 4th. I have them 4th as well. Yeah. I think this is a good pickup. I have no problems with it. It's just like, it doesn't have enough like wow factor, I guess, to make me be like to reconsider their standing in the league or like who this team is fundamentally. There's like not that big of a change from my outside opinion.
That's kind of how I'm looking at it too. I think it doesn't bump them into the top 3, but I think it does kind of solidify them as certainly going to be a playoff team. I think this is an improvement for the team. JJ was really solid, as you said, but FlyQuest was impressive. I mean, they were the only team outside of the top 3 with an over 500 record. First of all, right? So as long as they are improving steadily, they are going to be solidly a playoff team. They should be able to compete. But I don't think that outside of the top 3, like any team should be favored, against those top guys. I think that like in playoffs especially, it's going to be so incredibly hard to challenge them unless a team is improving by leaps and bounds throughout the regular season.
That's kind of an interesting topic. We've got our own gap in the LCS, and all the players themselves were talking about it last split, and it was the top 3 versus the field, everybody else. Yes, FlyQuest and Golden Guardians felt maybe like the 2 closest contenders. Let's see, Golden Guardians, they added academy players, but I don't think they changed any main roster.
Yep, and who he joined, Darshan joined.
Yep. Who he has support,
which I think is really interesting too. That's actually kind of exciting for me. And I mean, again, he's not on a team where they have like a really bad support or something where you think maybe he could get playtime. But I kind of felt like when he got replaced and he talked about potentially doing a role swap, support kind of makes sense because from everything that people talk about him, like he is a very good player with communication. He's really good at checking cooldowns. He's really good at like a lot of those parts of the game, but like his laning and stuff has never been as strong. I think there's less a mechanical requirement for support than there is for a mid laner, certainly, right? So it'll be interesting to see if he can add a lot of value, in that way. There are certainly some supports that do require, like heavy mechanics, but like you can play an entire season without anything being.
I think this is such an interesting discussion because people always, people identify so strongly usually with their main role that there are always these discussions, and it started.
I'm a build player. I'm unbiased.
You're a top laner.
You say that, but we all know what you are.
You're a filthy split push top laner.
It's not fraudulent. We know you better than you know yourself, bro.
Yeah, you'll play whatever, but like if you give Isaac some time and you're like, go climb, what is he playing?
Yeah,
playing top. You're playing top.
It's like when your buddy is like, yeah, I play Yasuo and Riven and Talon, and we're like, yeah, but you're very bad.
What was that one?
Average.
Very bad on 2 out of 3 of those.
Yeah,
you're a one trick.
It's like when I said I could play Thresh when I played support. I couldn't.
But here's the difference. I don't say I can play any of those super complicated champions. I'm playing, in the roles that I'm bad at, I'm not like, yeah, I'm a Draven player when I play bot lane. No, I'm playing some Caitlyn or some Tristana or whatever,
But as far as the specific support versus mid laner one, I do feel like supports can be super mechanically intensive, but just not in this carry-oriented mindset, right? So to me, one of the things I've been thinking about so much is like the different mindsets of the types of champions that you play and how you want to play through the game maybe is even a bigger difference than where you play the champion or what role, because we've had so much discussion with perks moving from mid to bottom and stuff around this kind of topic, and with impact, tanks, carries, side lanes. It's just like these different champions are classified by what lane they're played in rather than how they want to actually play in the game, how you want to play team fights, how you want to actually operate. And I think that is probably the more precise restriction or description for these things.
So you're talking more about like mindset required, right?
Well, I think like, the idea like Alistar is not the most complicated champion to play, and mechanically like, yes, you can mess up his headbutt pulve combos or whatever, but like what makes a good Alistar is like finding the flank and like knowing how long to sit in that brush before it's a waste of time, and like how to roam effectively. And like the mechanical skill comes from your consistency and being able to execute like medium level skill plays, whereas like you're not playing Zed and have to manage like 3 shadows and figure out like the exact optimal outplay. So like,
that's true. What about maybe Pyke?
I think Thresh is the most difficult mechanical champion.
Thresh definitely,
yeah. Like there's definitely hard mechanics, but it's I think a lot more.
We have another Yumi teaser here.
When are we going in on it?
I mean, I was watching
Wait for the
who
patch.
playing Yumi actually. But I do think, to me, like I think you made a good point, because I think it's very much about mindset when you're playing different types of champions. When people brush, tank players aside as, oh, well, tanks are easy to play because it's low mechanics. When I say support is like a lower mechanical thing than mid lane, I don't mean that it's easy to be a great support. I just mean that like that is something that you can excel in other areas and sometimes make up for it, right? It's the whole tanks versus carries thing. Like the best carry players sometimes are not good tank players, even though the mechanical requirement is so low, because they do not have a good understanding of the things that you need to be a great tank player, right? Of how much damage you can take. Should you be diving? Should you be peeling? When do you engage? Where do you engage? Do you need to be flanking? Do you need to be sitting on your carry? Like all these different things are different skills that are not necessarily like super well displayed on the screen. You watch a fight, okay, this guy ran in press W and that guy ran in press W, right? It looks the same. Great, they're both good Maokai players, but it's about when they did it, where they did it, how they did it, and that is like why I think there's an enormous difference between different levels of tank players and how these guys play out team fights. That isn't about mechanics, because any of us three can execute any of the like Maokai mechanics required. About as complicated as it gets is dodging a skill shot with a W or knocking someone over the dash with your Q, right? This is not complex, but it's about where you are on the map and when you are doing your things. And that's why I think it's kind of cool to see, the massive difference in play between two players playing a so-called easy champion, where one can be one of the best players in the world and another could be, Heartstuck Bronze or whatever, but you're both, using the same mechanics.
To tie that back into Golden Guardians, because I agree with most of that, I'm not convinced that this is going to be a great role swap. I think like the idea of Huhi being a more team-oriented player has always been true, and he's a big playmaker and all that stuff. But like, I can't think of too many players like late in their career who make that swap and it goes super well. I guess like maybe Ambition, but even then he swapped in terms of how many years he was a pro player. It was like what 2 or 3 mid versus like 6. So who knows?
But it's also academy. Right?
It's also
like,
academy.
It's just taking a shot, and if it works out really well, then great, it pays off.
Yeah, I think have to mention FBI for Jake Spawn Tiberia. Otherwise,
I wasn't even going to mention Jake, but
I wouldn't mention this without his pressure. So FBI is a very, very, very good Australian player.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, he played in play-ins. He had at least one super hard carry game that I saw.
He got ranked 3 on the Korean ladder, I think Spawn was saying.
Yep.
So he's definitely up there. He's really good.
Yeah, I mean, Jake had been talking about him a lot, and watching, doing play-ins, watching him in OPL. He was extremely dominant. Watching him at play-ins, he was certainly like, their team wasn't as good as some of the other teams, but he individually stood up. And Jake, had been a big kind of supporter of him, talking about how he really does think that this guy has been LCS and LEC ready for a while, and that it just kind of needed to get that shot. So it'll be interesting to see if he can work his way up, because I want to say it was it Lost was the last
Lost was the guy that they got, the Echo Fox.
Yeah,
Lost,
but he only played a short amount of time when he came over. So it'll be interesting to see if FBI is actually able to really establish himself here, or if he will kind of wallow away in academy, because it's always kind of sad to me when you see these big talents come over and then it never really pans out for them. Levi was another example, where I was so excited when he was coming over to the LCS. He never played a single LCS stage game, I don't believe, unless he played at Rift Rivals, but I don't think so.
No, because they had the import rule to deal with, so they never wanted to take out.
Yeah, they were messing around.
So
another player, so it didn't really work out. I'm very excited though for the Golden Guardians one, because I feel like their bottom lane is a possible area where they would make changes. So that's why we're talking so much about their academy changes here, because them adding Darshan, FBI, and Huhi, those are possibilities. I think Darshan's probably the lowest possibility of making it onto the LCS team, because I think Hunter was great. Extremely good. So, but FBI probably has the highest chance for me for possibly making.
They would need to swap Froggen or Ole out to get FBI on, right?
Yeah. Well, what I was thinking they could do, if Huhi and FBI are playing so much together, it would be a bottom lane switch. Yeah, because then Ole versus
Yeah. So I mean, that'd be really interesting, right? And we do have a recent example of a guy coming from a smaller region, Broken Blade, right? Like Broken Blade has been absolutely incredible for TSM. So it's interesting, because I was having some of this discussion during play-ins with some of the people, and a lot of the kind of coaches and analysts from some of these other regions really do strongly feel that while their teams are maybe not as good as some of the ones from the major regions, they do have individuals who are as good and who would thrive. And a lot of these guys are of the opinion that there should be more imports from the smaller regions than necessarily, some of the major ones, because there are these kind of like untapped resources.
It's also funny that you use the term smaller region, because a lot of them are actually bigger
player base.
Bigger player bases.
Well, I mean, smaller competitive scene, however you want to call it, emerging region, whatever.
But like the idea that more teams should be scouring the internets for untapped diamonds in the rough and in the emerging regions to put on, at the very least, an academy team like Golden Guardians is doing, is exactly, I think, the right thing for North American teams, rather than just being like, big name player from Korea whose team just lost and is probably depressed, let's sign him.
Especially for academy. I think it's a great way to use academy, is to try players out like this and see if they fit, right? Academy to me should be you shooting your shots on unproven talents and seeing if they work out. And if it does, it can pay off big for you.
All right. I want to talk about another couple of changes then.
Okay.
Because CLG did add Ruin to replace Darshan, who went to the Golden Guardians Academy. And I'm not quite sure if this is going to be like the big, change that the organization needed. Ruin was pretty good, but
Has your faith returned, Kobe? Is that what you're talking about? Because we're still in the 4-5 position for the most part in our power rankings. Suddenly you're bringing CLG up. Do you have?
I mean, they finished what, 7th?
They finished 7th before.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Are you have them in the playoffs with Rune as the?
I don't
so
have them
we all
ranked
have
in the playoffs.
FlyQuest GGS. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
4 or
Yeah,
5.
we both have that, and then it's
Echo
Echo
Fox
Fox,
finished
CLG,
6th.
Optic, Clutch, 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
I guess you can put forward. Okay, let's do it that way. Put forward of these last ones,
Your playoff team?
your playoff team. That's actually a fun way to do it. Who's your playoff team out of the remaining one?
I have 100 Thieves.
Whoa! All the way from last place.
We're doing it.
Rocket Mortgage up the.
They just signed Courage. JD, yeah.
The video is
really
actually
helped
hilarious,
their
by the
League
way.
of
Yeah.
Legends.
So I don't want to steal your CLG thunder if you have them. Who do you have?
I was just going down changes.
Oh, okay.
So you
Sorry.
go ahead on 100 Thieves because they also made some changes.
They made some changes. So they brought in Amazing for
And
the jungle and Soligo, who was already playing a little bit at the end of the last split. For the most part, Soligo was like losing lane. Kind
He
of
was doing okay though. Like,
Yeah,
I thought he was like fairly even when he went up against like Bjergsen, he was like doing okay.
He was like low forward percentage and usually had
Yeah.
like a pretty sizable CSD, like 10, but like he never died a ton. He was usually like stable in lane at the very least. It is very hard over the course of a full season to pick up a ton of wins if your mid laner is always down pressure.
Yeah.
But I think if that means Amazing is doing a good job finally snowballing the side lanes, which is like what people have been waiting for forever for 100 Thieves to do, then like I don't think anyone believes that they lived up to their potential last split. No way in terms of talent should they be a 10th place roster. These are at worst side grades, right? And so like if they're fixing the synergy problems that they had, the communication, the attitude, maybe they're no longer being like, we're going to be a top 3 team, and then they lose 4 games and their mental goes boom. Because they were 4-4 at one point last split. Like they were not. Like they lost so many games in a row at the end because it felt like they mental boomed. I feel like you can't mental boom when you're coming from a 10th place team and you know what you're signing up
You
for.
can still be mental boom.
You can still be mental boom, but it's not going to come out
Mark
of nowhere.
is saying a lot of stuff right now, but I'm
Yeah.
not really hearing like this is why they're gonna be the playoff team.
Yumi's back for Africa.
I mean,
I'm kidding. I think they have a lot of hard carry potential in their side lanes, which a lot of the other teams are lacking.
Yeah.
That they're competing against. Like, with all due respect to a lot of these other guys, like I don't think Biofrost and Stixay and Rune are better. I don't think Dokla and Arrow are better, and I think like they have better mid laners maybe, but like if Soligo can go even for the most part, even slightly behind as long as he's not dying and can follow up on plays, I think this team does have the ability to turn around, not all the way back up to a top 4 team like we were all saying in spring, but at least into the playoffs. Yeah.
The thing that's kind of interesting about it for me is it just depends on like, so it's funny because you're like, oh, you know, when he predicts it, but this is a team that people had as top 3 in the spring, and then they ended 10th, right? So my concern is less, you know, like, can the players on paper, you know, perform, you know, if they're playing really well, could they be that? Yes, of course. You know, I think it is for me a question about the mental and if they're going to be able to fix their issues, because they looked like such a defeated team down the stretch. It looked like they were just giving up in games and not necessarily fighting for inhibitors. And, you know, like somebody would get massively ahead in lane and then they just kind of would just like sit in the side lane and never do anything. It was hard to watch.
Impossible to mental boom in 10th place. Mark just said it.
Yeah, which I'm disagreeing with. So,
Amazing joined the 10th place team. If they end up 10th, he's not going to be surprised.
I disagree with that too. So to me, it's kind of about like, you know, is Amazing joining the team enough of like that mental reset where everyone's like, great, everything's good again? Because you do kind of get that honeymoon phase sometimes when a new player comes in where everything is feeling good and fresh and you can do it. And, you know, and if they can kind of turn things around off that, then I think this could certainly be a playoff team and maybe even competing for higher than 6th. But coaching hasn't changed. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of what you're going to have to look at is going to be issues within how they were coaching the team and how it was handled. When you talk about mental boom, that is something that is at the end of the day responsibility of the coaching staff to be able to kind of handle and work through it and get this team to a place where they're still, you know, competing to the full potential that they have. And they never did that.
How do you feel specifically about the change here? How do you think as an individual Amazing is going to do? Because he's been doing coaching and like analyst desk segments and stuff in Europe. And people aren't even really quite sure where he's going to land on the LCS stage. Even as a veteran, what are you thinking?
I'm hoping he has like a bit of that Meteos effect, and I think junglers in particular have that, where like you don't necessarily need to be like grind lording as hard in the jungle position. I think it's actually probably the easiest position to take breaks in and come back and like still have a good.
But it changes all the time.
It
Mark.
changes all the time, but like those are more cerebral changes than mechanical changes. I think about like understanding like, okay, well, Scuttle Crab spawns a minute later now, so my path is this now, and this influences my ganks at these timings, and level 2 junglers aren't important. Like it's less about like, oh my god, how's this champ work now? Which I think happens a lot in other positions when there's a big meta change. So I think I'm hoping he's able to come back. He's always been, I think, a good player around playing around his lanes, which I think Ondo was not very good at. Like they really struggled to snowball top lane as much as they should have.
Yeah, I think they publicly said like one of the big issues was communication with jungle was one of the big reasons for the change.
Yeah, and like
direct.
Part of the problem is like 2 of them are Korean speakers. So like Amazing's not going to fix that probably, but at the very least, I think he conceptually understands what a laner might want more, because I think Ondo was like good about efficiency and like pathing, but not necessarily like I'm going to do something inefficient to snowball a lane. Interestingly, on Collegiate, if you didn't watch, I was talking with one of the junglers, and he was talking about how CKG is really good. He doesn't understand jungling, like pathing, but he's really good about getting his laners ahead because he used to be a laner. And he was talking about the differences that junglers have in those kind of skill sets. And I think that's hopefully something Amazing can bring is like, you have strong side laners, get them ahead. Your efficiency is not as important for this team.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's always so interesting about jungle is that you need the holistic understanding of the entire game more so than every other role, because you have to understand every single matchup of all of your teammates plus what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Use that to navigate.
If you're blue side, it's like, I don't care if you cycle Krugs effectively. If I'm playing Jace and I need you to protect my wave, because if Jace gets ganked and killed, Jace is now useless. Like a jungler needs to understand that more than anyone else. And I think like when someone is like, no, but my Krugs are up and I have to cycle Krugs because they're the most efficient camp, it's like, that's not how you win the game.
Yeah, or to be fair, you can have laners who can effectively explain that to you as long as you have
for sure.
But that's where communication becomes so important, right? If you can't communicate effectively with your teammates and you don't understand the matchup and they're not explaining it to you why it matters so much, then yeah, I think it's going to be pretty doomed.
All right, what about you, Azael? Who's getting your playoff spot?
Oh man, it's actually really hard. I'm willing to bet on CLG, just because I think so. Like Ruin, I don't think is like the next coming. I don't think he's gonna absolutely dominate the league or anything like that. The real question to me is like if CLG is going to kind of adapt their playstyle to how he played, or if he's going to adapt his playstyle to how CLG wants him to play. Because Ruin was very heavily a split push player. He's a carry style player, and he wins games by like playing side lanes almost entirely, right? Like when you watch their finals, as well as a lot of in play-ins, champions like Ryze were super high priority for him, and he's going to put himself ahead. He's going to prioritize getting his own farm, and he's going to win through, side lane dominance. And I do think that that can be, like a fairly effective style, and it's kind of what Darshan had been in the past. And I do think that individually, Ruin is going to be better than Darshan was. So, if you have another strong lane there, like that could, I think, spell good things for the team. Especially when, you have like Power of Evil, who I still think is a very strong laner. If he has more pressure elsewhere on the map, then maybe he can do good things with that. I think the pitfall that could occur is if you try to take, this split push guy and slap him on some tanks and say, all right, now you're playing weak side of the map every game. Well, maybe that's not going to work. And the other risk is certainly like, can CLG adapt to play more around those split push styles, right? So I think that is the big question for me. But I do think CLG was really close to actually making playoffs last time around. I still think Ruin is an upgrade over Darshan, and I think that these kind of clump of teams are all very close, and I do think that pickup could make a difference.
I think that the bottom of the LCS is way harder to predict than the top for sure. And I think the thing that scares me for CLG is I'm not convinced that like Darshan was the problem specifically. Like I agree he was, probably past his prime, one of the weaker top laners in the league, but like I don't see Rune.
They have a lot of issues.
They have a lot of issues
but all these teams do.
A lot of these teams do. I think for CLG, like some of their org left this offseason. I haven't heard any substantial additions to it. They were doing really weird drafts. They were swapping players around at pretty random times in the season. Like, I personally still maintain that, like, I think it was their week 7 change tanked their chances at making playoffs. I thought they were a playoff team if they didn't make those changes. And like those kinds of decisions aren't maybe going anywhere. So I think Rune is not a significant of enough upgrade. And I think if the other teams also improve, like if Echo Fox, if Rush is not dying all the time in the first 4 weeks, if he has a good split the entire time, like we saw in the last couple of weeks, like I think Echo Fox will still be above CLG and those kinds of things.
Yeah. The Echo Fox and Clutch Gaming, I think both of those teams have a decent chance. I was having a really hard time making my case for Optic. I was trying to like make a case for each one of these teams. And I was like, Optic didn't make any changes. And I love their mid and jungle situation. And they even said that I think Medios is is like the full time now, right?
Okay.
So they have more like established, even though they still have Dardoch on there, I think. But the side lanes for them, I feel pretty like it's very difficult to predict them making it in without some changes going on the side lanes, I think.
Yeah, I think it is going to be tough, and I mean for a lot of these teams, it's like the differences between these teams was very slight, right? Through 9-10 was like pretty far down, top 3 was pretty far up, and then you had this like crunch of teams in the middle. FlyQuest, Golden Guardians, Echo Fox, CLG, and Optic were all like 2 games apart from top to bottom, right? CLG and Optic were 1 game behind Echo Fox. Like this is a matter of inches between these teams, and I think it is about who can make, like, who has the most obvious things to improve upon, and that is again kind of what you were talking about with CLG is kind of almost something that, like, I'm assuming that they can recognize too, because I also agreed when they were swapping in their academy. So when they made the academy swaps, they lost almost every single game. I believe maybe they even did lose every single game.
I think they were 0-4 or 0-5 or something with them.
Exactly, right?
And they did it against weak opponents. They would lose against TSM.
Yep.
And TL or something, and then go play Optic and then make their swap then. So it's like those are when you need to pick up wins.
Exactly. And I mean they're 7-11. So you look at like 0-4-0-5 with that against opponents that you maybe could have actually like
I thought their 7-11 was gonna be reference to
so to me it's like that is something where you hope that the coaching staff and the management there like recognize that those were problems and they need to focus heavily on making playoffs. And if that is the case, that seems like the team was already capable of picking up a number more wins, which would have put them in playoffs. So that is something that is maybe an easy grab. Clutch, Piglet is out and Cody-san is in. That is another
I'm excited
interesting
for the
one.
return of Cody.
Yeah, I mean, Cody-san, I think, is a guy that like really kind of just fell off the map. It was kind of weird to a lot of people when like he got essentially subbed out. He stopped being used. Even at Worlds and all these things, there was all the kind of drama with 100 Thieves. Then he was put on Clutch. They stuck with Piglet pretty much the whole way through. Now it is back to Cody-san.
And even just as a play style, I think he works a lot better on Clutch, where you have like a very resource heavy top laner with Huni, and then Piglet also played super aggro, and so like if one of those lanes fell behind, usually like it's just so hard to win from that. I like Cody-san, who's a lot more passive in lane, which will allow them to focus on the top side hopefully, and then he's still a really competent, good mid and late game team fighter. So like with Crit Marksman maybe coming back with some of the changes, like hopefully he can just chill out in the bot lane while top side of the map makes all the plays in the early game, and then they go from there. So like I think this change does a lot of good for Clutch.
Yeah, I actually saw interview with Demonte last week or something like that. And he was feeling like super confident. He was like, oh yeah, the scrims are going great. Hooney's returning back to form. And I was like, oh,
Whose stock you buying?
I feel like
who's your 6, by the way?
Always, I feel like our discussions with those teams are always like, is Hooney coming back?
Yeah.
Like we did that the whole split, right?
Because Huni at his best is going to get you a lot of wins.
Yeah, it didn't happen in spring, but like I got excited again. So I was like, oh, no matter how many times it happens and it comes up not to be true, you're like, but is he though?
Tails.
Is
Tails.
Who you betting on,
Tails.
Kobe? Who's your number 6? Who's
I mean, I had CLG, but then you went with CLG, so I
it doesn't mean you have
You,
to change.
you can have the
It's-
same.
It's not taken.
yeah, but it's not as interesting, so we don't get to explain.
We can
more.
talk about other people. Like, who's your 10th? I bet we all have different 10ths.
Yeah, and we did touch on all of them. I think that I am going to take Echo Fox actually, because Rick Fox just got out of Iron 4.
He's no longer the 98th ranked player.
Yeah, he got some advice from Double Lift and his son, and
There
he's
you go.
climbing just like the team is gonna climb into playoffs. How you like that answer, Isaiah?
Not a lot.
I liked my own answer more when I wasn't even picking them about Rush doing better.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think Echo Fox has a lot to improve on, even without needing roster changes. Just how different that team looked between the first half of spring and the second half of spring.
Yeah. And I mean, even if individual by individual, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the Hooney thing, when's he coming back or whatever. But the same question is all around Rush, right?
Mhm.
There are these players that we have seen have success right in front of our eyes that did not perform last split, and the memories are still there, right? So the belief is definitely still there that there's a possibility for either of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your 10th place teams? This is my favorite.
That's just a mean one. Like
what? It's
All
part
right,
of
all right.
predicting.
All right, number
Right.
10. Number 10.
We can skip 7, 8, 9 if you guys want, or we can do all of them. I don't care.
I mean, it's just if there's other changes that you're kind of interested in with those teams, right? We've covered, I think, most of the.
It makes me sad, but I'm gonna throw Optic then.
That's mine actually too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you,
that's,
Zell?
that's actually what I have.
What?
Oh, okay, never mind. I thought it would be more interesting.
That makes it seem
So I
like
had-
it's a given, but I feel like there's
No, I think it's pretty much coin flip. Like,
Yeah.
so I have my top 10 was CLG I had there, and then I had Echo Fox, 100 Thieves, Clutch, Optic. But I really think that anywhere from 6th to 10th is like super up in the air,
Mhm.
and I don't feel like really confident about any of those spots. I think it's really hard to actually predict the bottom half of the table. Any of those 5 teams, I think, because they're pretty close within striking distance. If 100 Thieves performs better, them going from 10th to 6th is not a shock. I think it's similarly said, with Clutch and with a lot of these teams, because it was small differences between them. The only reason that I really had Optic there is I just like, for me, they didn't make any changes. It felt like it's maybe kind of weird to say, but I felt like they were performing at the level that they're going to be performing at, right? And I felt like there was more room for growth for some of these other teams.
It's hard to convince yourself why they would look better for spring.
Yeah.
And so, like, even though they weren't 10th last time, in fact, they were their 8th, right? Yeah.
I believe. Let me
Because it was Echo Fox 6th.
it's tied for 7th.
Yeah, tied for 7th. So, like, if nothing changes and they're playing at their level, they could be 7th again. But it's just, maybe it's a kind of bias where you're like, well, why would they get better? Like, CLG made a change, they should get better. Echo Fox should be performing better. 100 Thieves should be performing better. Clutch should be performing better. And so even if they play the same level and play 7th again, it's just like right now hard to justify.
I mean, the 2 teams that were under them in the standings last time, I think both did improve.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I have more faith in 100 Thieves. Like, I don't believe that they were a 10th place quality team. I think they should be getting better. I do think that like switching away from Piglet to Cody Sun should help.
Yep.
I think Clutch quite a bit. CLG, I do think Rune is an upgrade over Darshan. Those are your 3 closest competitors, and and if those teams are all getting better, then you have to do something more. You have to do something special, and Optic felt like pretty even keel throughout the split. So unless they are really like improving individually and making some more like kind of individual changes, I think it can be kind of hard to keep pace because these teams were already very close.
All right, let's get into the patch then. How these teams are gonna do right off the bat with 9-10. We actually skipped a couple patches since we last saw competitive, so a lot of things are gonna be updated, not just 9-10, the Scuttle Crab. I know you guys were really big on the Aatrox changes, but as far as specifically 9-10, we've been alluding to Yuumi all show long, and I feel like after the hot fixes, she's in a fairly strong, at least power level situation right now. And I've talked to a bunch of pros, and actually they're pretty split on it as far as the people that I have talked to. Some of them still think she's not good. Some of them think that it's very strong now when you have the right composition to pair it with. Do you guys think it's going to be used in competitive? What are you feeling about the Yumi release?
So I think as far as solo queue goes, I think it's just getting massively stronger the longer it's out, because like I've played some Yumi, I've played some against Yumi laning, and just in the teams. I found one of the hardest things was, even once I felt like I understood the champion, if my teammate, like who I'm laning with, doesn't understand it and doesn't understand that like my Q range is attached to them, they need to be like moving forward if the other team is moving back, and these sorts of things. Like there's a lot of kind of coordination issues there. My biggest concern for Yumi for competitive play actually has nothing to do with the individual strength of the champion. It's how do you get vision as a Yumi player moving around on your own? How do you match roams as a Yumi player? And these sorts of things that are much less important in solo queue and are critically important in competitive play. It's the same reason that we have often, asked the questions of like, oh, why isn't there more like Zyra or Brand or Vel'Koz or whatever? They're so good in lane, right? They're so annoying. Look at all this sick poke they can do. And the answer is almost always, well, yeah, but what do you do past 10 minutes when you're supposed to be warding up around Dragon and these champions can't face check? It's so heavily why we see the Brahms and the Alistars and the Tom Kenches, because you can walk up to a brush and not get one shot. Yumi starts the game with like 450 health or something like that. Like, you are so squishy. If you are not leashed to someone, you will die. And maybe there is adjustments that you can make where the jungler is just always paired up with you and you're always leashed to jungler, and then you go around as a squad and get vision. But I still think that there's a lot of times in competitive play where you need to be able to make these solo ventures to match roams to mid lane, to be able to secure vision on your own. I think Yumi is really going to struggle to do that. If you can kind of get around that by playing super heavily with your jungler, then great. I think, it has a lot of teamfight presence. I think it's a fairly strong and annoying laner, or can be at times. But I just think that it's so risky to be played in the mid game, and I think that even for lane, some of the hard engage answers are there. Like I've played Nautilus into this. It felt like an absolute joke. Like, if Yumi is fully attached to the person and not coming out for auto attacks and stuff, you just win the all in every time. And if she does unleash, she gets like one shot by some of these all in champions. It's I think a delicate balance.
So before we get into maybe some of the design of it, like just the I think it's going to be one of those. A lot of people think it's strong right now in like warping scrim meta, but that's what I've heard, as well as some people saying, oh, they don't think it's that good. It feels like a lane-focused champion, so it's no surprise that like in scrims, it's going to feel like a powerhouse, but on stage, it might not. Yeah. It was brought out a couple times in collegiate. It almost always looked good, but then they lost, I think, 2 out of the 3 games they played it. And so, not like LCS. LCS is a level above collegiate, of course, but like I can see a world where people feel like it's really strong right now. People pick it a lot week 1 and week 2, but they lose all the time with it before. It's like, oh, this is like Sona, Brand, all these other examples you're talking about, where like for the most part they're annoying in lane, but once you get out of there, you're fine. What I think the other thing is, though, like you're saying, there's a lot more to be able to do. So like the strengths are in other areas, like be able to take TP on your AD carry and get back to lane. Mm-hmm. You can also just take triple combat summoner. So one of the things I was hearing from pros was like, when you pick a Nautilus or something that should kill it in lane, if you don't win that first all-in attempt, which is hard to do versus triple combat summoner, you are then screwed the entire laning phase, because you got that turned around on you, your engage is down now, and then the rest of the laning phase, she just sustains and pokes you out. So like, I can see a world where she is, so unique in the support position that like you can handle some of the mid-game difficulties of vision control because you get these other advantages.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep an open mind on it. And whenever there are champions like this released, that's what I try and do. And because my initial reaction was, as soon as I saw the explanation of even just the first 2 abilities and her being like the Wisp or whatever that was, Dota that's attached to people, I was like, I absolutely hate that for competitive.
Wisp can be attacked though.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just the small parallel, right? Is you attach to people. And my initial reaction was, oh my God, I hate it. So I am going to keep my mind open, especially for, a first few weeks of how this can change, because it might be valuable to have something that's like, oh, this has to be lane power, and it changes the way you play the game, because you literally cannot roam around because you are walking money bag early game, and you have to coordinate with people to put you in their backpacks to take you around to ward or whatever. But I just looking at it, from like a fairly far back view, was like, I really hate the idea of removing positioning and thought from one player in the game to be like in untargetable, attached to somebody, invincible, and then like you have to rely on the other person for your positioning. You take out some of the more interesting aspects of the game to me. It changes quite a few things, and it didn't feel to me like it added enough things in replacement. Her kit is like super high damage poke thing where she can basically guarantee it because it's just your mouse controlling or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to worry about your
It's
whoever,
really
whoever
unmissable
you're
if they're in
on.
range.
Yeah. But other than that, it's just like you get stats and you get free heals and move speed and like a giant AoE damage. And so my initial reaction was I did not like it for competitive. I do see the value for having something like that for solo queue, for people playing with their friends. You want to bring newer people into the game and stuff like that. Like I can see that for a social game makes a lot of sense. I think that they should heavily force balance this to be viable for low ELO and completely not viable for competitive.
Well, so the problem, I mean, not a designer, obviously,
Yeah.
and I don't want to throw any shade, but like it feels to me from what I see how the kit works from watching it in pro or the collegiate scene and just watching solo queue of it, like I hope Zale's concerns are right that like in competitive it doesn't function because it's too dependent on teammates. Because if it is fine and competitive, there's no way it's balanced in solo queue. Because the kit is actually very complicated. It's like you said, it's supposed to be designed for simple, maybe new players to the game. That seems to be like the goal is like this is a fun thing anyone can pick up. The projectile just follows your mouse. It's really simple. You attach to someone, you just press E on them. It's hard to mess up. But it's actually super complicated to optimize correctly and all the intricacies of the kit.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah, like popping in and off of someone at the right time and understanding how the internal cooldown resets. You can actually pop off someone, body block a skill shot, and then go back. You can pop off, and I've been told, I haven't tested it, you can disjoint a skill shot even. Like if you buffer it correctly or something. I need to test that one. That could be wrong. But either way, like the trading pattern is actually complicated where like you walk forward, get the auto attack off to get your shield and pop back with your W timing. And you want to pop your W timing correctly so you can disjoint and do that quickly. And like laning is actually really hard on this champion to do
That's
optimally.
What I was gonna say. I don't see it as an easy champion. I think it's actually really complex. And all the things you're talking about just get more complex to do it at the highest level in a team fight, because now you're supposed to be doing this and bouncing around all different members. But like, I mean, I do get the idea that like the lowest common level of play is I attach to you and now I will sit on you for the rest of the game, right? And like if you're looking at it like that, but I think it's a pretty complex champion.
Right. So like it's fine if the skill ceiling is low, but if the skill ceiling is also high, and people can win at the high skill ceiling, then you have to nerf that, and then you're pushing the overall power of the champion down unless you really kind of take away some of the more complex parts of the kit.
And that's what they would have to do, right? That is what the designers end up doing often when they're trying to push something out of pro and into solo queue. It's more about like nerfing some of the higher skill aspect type things. I do think some of the unique strengths that Yuumi does have that can make it powerful is the fact double combat summoners, which you mentioned, right? You don't need flash because you have W. You are normally attached to people. That is your escape. So you're using double combat summoners. You do not need to rush early boots. You can go incredibly squishy builds and not really care about that to have a lot of extra power. So things like Mage Eyes, if you're winning the game, can be incredibly effective, because if your team is ahead and you're winning every team fight, you should always have someone to attach to if you're playing it well to stay alive. I've been seeing a lot of people, have a lot of success with things like, Mage Eyes and an early Ardent Sensor and these sorts of builds that have like no HP whatsoever in them and are pure squish, but they're very, very effective because you don't have to care about the fact that you can get one shot because you're always untargetable.
Yeah, my problems for that on all these strengths are like those are just super frustrating for the opponents. I guess my question is like, does it add enough of a positive for the Yuumi, like hopping in and off people and the team working around cat juggling, I guess.
I feel like
Is that adding the positives that we want to see in competitive? Because that was my initial reaction, was I'd rather have it be a solo queue focused thing rather than see it
right, like Rise is like a competitive champion where that ultimate is like no one in solo queue is going to use that like as a team well, whereas like in pro it's like, wow, the teleport from pushing a lane to Baron is super strong. You know, like I hope Yuumi ends up more and they'll like, this is really good for solo queue, like you said, it's good for newer players playing with friends maybe. If it is good and competitive, which is what I've heard from some people, and when I see the kit it looks complicated, I really hope that they push it back towards the solo queue realm, because like you're saying, I don't think it adds a ton for competitive. And if it's just really strong competitive, then it's not going to reach its goal of being a noob-friendly champion, because its win rate has to be low because it's like crushing Diamond or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be interested. I'm kind of reserving judgment until I actually get to see it on the LCS stage, because I don't, scrim results often don't mean a ton.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Will people be willing to risk, playing it, for even the vision game? And it's also just so hard for me to really establish like strong opinions other than what I think as far as like the more meta stuff, like I'm talking about with vision, because both when I've played as it and when I've played against it, I have very little confidence that either side is playing it correctly. Right? Because it's not just about like, oh, you know how to play Morgana well, right? It's you two both have to know how to play as Yuumi, and that hasn't really happened. So like when I've played against it and slammed it, I'm like, I think you can probably beat this. But then when I hear, some of the other thoughts of like, oh, triple combat summoners, and when you're, disjoining skill shots and doing these things, I'm like, well, maybe my all-ins wouldn't work then, So because it's so unlike what we have seen before in League, I really do think it needs some time to actually shake out at the highest level, and even for solo queue, for people to learn how to play as and against it, not just as supports, but as the bot laners themselves.
I agree. I am concerned, but not pressing the panic button yet.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I don't
bans.
think
we have bans in competitive.
Yeah.
Worst case, it's OP. It gets banned red side every game. We've had that for all of League of Legends.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why we're saying keep an open mind,
Yeah.
because you never should hit the panic button right at the beginning.
It's sometimes fun though. Have you ever just freaked out?
Yeah,
And then
that's what I'm saying. Where he's like, I'm not gonna have a strong opinion. It's fun to have a strong opinion.
No, it's
as soon as you see
devil.
stuff.
Well, I mean, I
Cat
gave
devil.
my strong opinion, but more just I have been seeing some very large, what I've considered to be overreactions.
Well,
of,
Twitch chat.
of people saying Yuumi is gonna ruin competitive and stuff, and I'm like, worst case, you just ban it every game.
I don't know if the general Reddit / Twitch chat community opinion is different, but like they think it's terrible. When it got picked in collegiate, I would have Twitch chat up a little bit, and I would like look and see what people think. They're like, oh my god, they picked Yuumi, they're trolling, and I'm like,
wait, you cast with Twitch chat up? That's crazy to me.
sometimes I'm not like staring at it.
He's trolling.
He is.
Why is that trolling?
That's super trolling.
Why is it trolling?
Because you gotta pay attention to the game.
It's pick ban.
You should be paying attention to your co-caster.
I don't know how long you think it. Like you don't have the mental capacity to like read a sentence or two.
He's gonna turn around.
I am blaming you guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
We can't think through our pick and ban the chat.
No, we can't do that. Yeah. It's definitely more beneficial.
Right.
It's also
to look at all the
first time
kappas in the Twitch chat.
I would argue it has value to see what the community perception of a champion lock-in is for the first time.
So you can
for the first time.
to it.
Yeah, because if people think if people think it's poo-poo and it's not poo-poo, I need to tell them that it's not poo-poo. So a large part of what I said.
Hey, Bob Dole 33, you're wrong.
I didn't target anyone.
Dole's in the Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Is that actual Bob Dole?
No, it's 33. It's just,
What happened to that guy? I don't even know. I'm just saying that like knowing
Call
what
him
the
out.
community thinks allows you to cater what you're saying, so I could explain like the Yuumi mechanics and what makes
You're
it
just
strong.
a Twitch chat shill.
That's all. I just want to be liked.
Okay.
I don't want
I
to
understand.
have strong opinions.
Yeah.
All right, we got some Twitter questions, Sale. I think you tweeted out before the show,
No, I
maybe.
did not.
Oh, you did it? Oh, I'm trolling you then.
Yeah.
My bad. I don't think we have any Twitter questions then.
More patch talk because we can talk about Ginsu's nerf.
I mean,
Scuttle Crab change.
So I actually wanted to talk
Let me
about.
check, see if I got some questions.
I still wanted to talk about the Runic Echoes buff because it's a significant gold buff to the AP jungle item. If you haven't seen, it's
cheaper.
It's still 910. But I already felt like Elise, at least Elise and Karthus, maybe Evelyn, which has shown up even already in some pro games before the buff, were super viable AP options. if we're gonna have more AD laners and people diversify. But I'm actually pretty excited with this buff. I definitely see strong resurgence of AP junglers. I hope that it's not a majority of Karthus though, because I think that both Elise and Evelyn are a bit more interesting than the farm and
press
ultimates coming down. But I do think that all three of those are going to be super viable now.
Well, I think also with the Ginsu's, or not, I don't want to say Ginsu's, the Scuttle Crab change should help all those junglers because they're all more 3 or onwards. Yeah. The other two still are not really going to be contesting Scuttle Crabs, but at least Elise will be a little easier to play potentially with that change. Champion pets also now apply the burn. Another Elise buff.
This is the tiniest change that I've seen to a jungle item ever.
Is Heimer viable now? Is that a pet?
Zyra jungle?
Yeah.
It's back.
I think Zyra might maybe be the biggest that I don't know.
I played some Zyra jungle
small.
when it first got changed. Morgana and Zyra a long time ago.
Yeah.
It never really picked up.
Yeah.
I think the Ginsu's one's pretty big from what I've heard is it's pushing crit marksman a little higher up. Like it's not a straight nerf from like the 2 to 3 because you do get the 15% pen on it. But from what I've heard, like Varus, Kaisa, people are trying to find new builds, see if they're still good for the most part. Yeah. People are liking Xayah, Sivir, even some Caitlyn, like crit champion. So that could change the meta a little bit to be better for teams like probably Team Liquid and Clutch and like the more bot-oriented teams potentially or bot carry teams.
But yeah, I see a bit of bottom lane change and some influx of AP jungle, but that's about it. I think solo lanes stay very much the same for me. Like Akali, Aurelia, Sylas, these types of things are all still going to be super strong. I think those are still in there. And there were no changes to updates for Sona Taric as a strategy either. So I think that is still a possible option down in the bottom lane, even with all the.
That's interesting because it didn't really work at MSI.
Yeah, I mean, I heard from a couple of players though that they at least still find it really annoying, which to me makes it sound like it's still strong for scrims at least.
Sonateric or the
yeah.
Well, I could see it being.
I've been hearing some stuff about funnel too. Some people have been telling me
I know that a lot of teams have been practicing.
They're practicing it. Yeah. I don't know if we'll see it or not, but that is one change that I'm not looking forward to. I'm hoping that it's at least not a dominant strategy.
Yeah, well, what I heard was that it is not dominant.
Yeah.
However, it is definitely an option, and teams are practicing it. And so I'm actually not that upset. As much as I was like, I didn't really like funnel games. It being a strategy that is okay, but slightly bad, I think is a good spot.
Yeah, I think Crumbs has been the one tweeting a lot about Leona Mordekaiser as a funnel strat mid. Whatever.
New Mord or old Mord?
Old Mord. And new Mord I don't think is on PBE yet. Might be, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyways, old Mord, Leona funnel with it because he gets the XP share and all that stuff. If that's like not a dominant strategy, but like, hey, you can maybe find a win against a better team than you because they're.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, like sure. I think kind of off meta strategy should be in the meta. As weird as that says. Out of meta, in the meta strategies.
This is the big brain looks at Twitch chat while casting.
Yeah.
So we might not be able to follow.
Well, to be fair,
explanation.
He's not able to look at Twitch chat during this. So his
what opinion can I steal? But yeah, I think
I agree.
I don't like when the primary strategy in the meta is like it's Ardent Sensor, play it. And if you're not going to play it bot lane, put Ivern in your team comp. You need it. Like I didn't like that meta. I like when there's more creativity.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think at MSI we had a lot of that, right? We actually did have diverging strategies. If some funnel is thrown in the mix, I'm totally happy with that. But I'm definitely excited for the season to get going and to see how wrong we are about some of these predictions. But it should be a lot of fun. I think having some changes at the bottom of the table makes a lot of those teams exciting to watch again, to see how it's actually going to shake out. I'm so excited to see how the top 3 are going to be performing. Them fighting, going towards Rift Rivals, going towards Worlds. I'm actually really, really excited to see how well they're performing because I feel more invested in the success of those top 3 teams in the early season than otherwise because I want to see them representing well at Rift Rivals.
Yeah, we're coming back to summer, I feel like, with such a crazy amount of hype because, like I said before, Team Liquid doing that well on the international stage just made me feel really, proud. We have 3 Titans ready to clash here in summer, and everyone's going to follow. Oh, my God, they dropped a game to this team. Oh, no, what's going wrong? They're going to...
I mean, even if one of them doesn't make it to Worlds, that means like this other team came up and took over that position. So I'm really excited too that we're actually not just like these changes are crazy. Hopefully we're good. It's like we are good. Now let's see who gets to get to the top of the pyramid.
Yeah. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Join us for summer. We're going to have Team Liquid versus TSM on Saturday.
Right.
The show with Countdown starts at 1:30, so tune in then.